Chapter 18. Cursed. Vogel stared out of the cutter's hatch at the treetops. Most of the view was blocked by the branches and leaves of the tree in which he was trapped. A few times he thought he saw a glimpse of white stone in the distance. The trip through the desert world had left him parched. Vogel licked his dry lips and thought, "Those two better." The loud beeping sound of the battery-powered alarm clock interrupted his thoughts. He spun around, startled, and tried to understand what it meant. The annoying noise was followed by the rising pitch of the drill's motor as it came to life and gained speed. The air inside the cutter became charged with static. He lunged for the generator. As his hands fumbled at the drill's trigger, a blue-white spark jumped to the nearest wall. Without Daniel's earring, the cutter stayed where it was, stayed in that universe, and stayed in that tree. But Vogel and the entire contents of the cutter traveled to the nearest neighboring universe. For the briefest of moments, Vogel was somewhere else. It was the same as his first trip in the cutter. In an instant, Vogel bounced back to the jungle world. In his absence, the earth had rotated beneath his previous position in the tree. His new location was 1,000 feet away and 60 feet above the slow, muddy water of the river. The sand left over from the desert world, the Van de Graaff generator, and Shadrach Vogel simultaneously hit the water with a splash. He bobbed to the surface and took a deep breath. The water was warm and refreshing. He would have enjoyed it had panic not set in. Vogel swam for the nearest bank faster than he ever had in his life. The muddy river bottom rose under his feet as he grew closer to the vines and tree trunks lining the edge of the water. A heavy log bumped hard against him. The air left his lungs with a whoosh. Vogel struggled to get his head above water for another gulp of air. As he did, he saw that it wasn't a log that had struck him. He saw the eyes and nostrils of the crocodile. It was the size of a city bus. The head alone was over 3 feet long. It could easily swallow him in one bite, but something made it hesitate. The croc had an intensely uneasy feeling about this thing that had dropped into its river. It circled him as if trying to decide whether eating such an easy meal was worth it. Vogel didn't wait to find out what the croc would decide and resumed his frantic swim to the bank. His arm struck a wet branch. He grabbed it. As Vogel hauled himself out of the water, he looked to see where the croc had gone, but it was nowhere in sight. The opposite side of the river was flat and sandy, almost inviting, but the side Vogel had chosen at random was a tangle of tree roots, vines, and muck. He crawled through toward an open spot as the twigs and thorns tore at his clothes and flesh. When Vogel finally reached open ground, he paused for a rest, still on his hands and knees. The warmth of the sun felt good against his wet skin. He decided to take a moment to catch his breath, but a rustling sound in the distance became louder. He looked up, still panting, as 3 dozen squirrels swarmed him. One was unlucky enough to miss his torn clothing and touched bare skin. It shrieked and leapt into the open air, twisting and flipping madly before landing in the grass of the meadow. It darted away a few feet, stopped as if changing its mind, and ran back at full speed for another go at Vogel's pockets. Another touched bare skin and mimicked his friend's mid-air dance, also running away only to come back for more. 2 clever individuals managed to get the pistol out of his pocket, but it was too heavy for them to carry, and it fell to the ground. They turned their attention back to his pockets in search of smaller treasures. Once the squirrels were satisfied that they had all there was to take, they retreated into the trees and vanished. Vogel returned the pistol to his pocket and rolled over onto his back to try and process what had just happened. The sun felt good on his face. He closed his eyes. Vogel only got 30 seconds of rest before the jungle went silent. The warmth of the sun was replaced with a sudden chill as the shadow of a giant eagle crossed his face. The sharp talons pierced his belly and throat. The lurch upward took his breath away. Vogel flailed wildly, his legs fruitlessly kicking open air, his fists hitting feathered legs that refused to release him. The meadow receded as the inches became feet and yards. He glanced around in a panic and saw that he was rising past the tops of the smaller trees. Remembering his pistol, Vogel drew it from his pocket and fired wildly, but the bullet passed through the feathers of the bird's wing. He grabbed one of its legs to steady himself for a better shot. The eagle screeched at his touch. He fired again and missed again. This time, his aim was spoiled because the eagle had released him. Vogel realized he was falling again. He struck the hard ground in the tall grass and lost consciousness.